6 photographs, 6 uniforms, 1 man. His name is Wilhelm II, German Emperor, eldest grandson of Queen Victoria, and for 30 years the most powerful man in Europe. The history books drew him one way: the spiked helmet, the iron mustache, the warlord who armed a continent and marched it off a cliff. The books are half right. The helmet was real. The mustache was real. I searched the reign for the warlord underneath. He is not there. The helmet was the deepest part of him. You were promised a war machine. What was delivered is a wardrobe with an army attached. One more thing. Look at the left hand in every photograph. Always on a sword. Always tucked. Always holding something. He arranged that. His whole life. We will get to it. Right. The studio. There he is. Chin at altitude. Spine like a flagpole. Left hand resting, always, on the sword. The expression of a man who has never been told no by anyone he couldn't have arrested. Hold on! He has changed. Somewhere at the back of that rotation, the general became an admiral. I am told nothing can be done. The specification. 30 years on the throne of the strongest state in Europe. A navy second only to Britain's, built to pass it. And Britain was run by his grandmother. And a formal title, Supreme Warlord, which he enjoyed more than the work attached. Every line of that card is real. Not one of them will survive the next 10 minutes. Styling, then. His favorite department. Occasionally, his only one. Every morning, before the empire could be governed, a barber reported to the palace and built the mustache. Built it. The points were hauled up and set with a wax, and the wax had a brand name. It translates as, "It is achieved." Remember that name. Below the mustache, the collection. Wilhelm did not own uniforms the way monarchs do. He collected them the way other men collect stamps, except his stamps had tailors. On a full day he changed 6 times. An army uniform, normal. A navy uniform, normal. A full admiral's rig for visiting an aquarium. You saw the flash. It was real. Somewhere in that palace, a valet asked, "Which uniform will His Majesty require for the fish?" And the alarming part, an answer existed. Now, the honest part. It worked. This was the most convincing-looking emperor of his century. The posture, the continent of medals. If the job were the poster, we could end the review here and order more units. Styling this careful is never an accident. It is always covering for something quiet. Wilhelm was born with a left arm that never grew. A difficult birth damaged the nerves, and the arm stayed short and withered all his life. He learned to ride with one hand, to shoot with one hand, to eat with a combined knife and fork, built so guests would notice nothing. In every portrait, his entire adult life, the hand on a sword hilt, tucked into a coat, holding white gloves. You saw it in the opening photographs. I won't be making jokes about the arm. It was a birth injury, nobody's fault, and the single most human thing about him. But everything above that sleeve was compensation. The uniforms, the medals, the volume. An empire's worth of armor around one hidden arm. Nobody dared tell him he had nothing to prove. So he proved it, with a real army. So how does this man end up with Europe's finest military machine? He doesn't earn it. He unwraps it. 1888 was the year of 3 emperors. In spring, his grandfather died. His father took the throne, dying of throat cancer, and reigned 99 days. At 29, unprepared and supremely confident, Wilhelm became emperor of Europe's strongest country. Standing beside the new throne was Otto von Bismarck, the man who had assembled the German Empire by hand, the one person who knew where all the wiring ran. So, Wilhelm fired him. 2 years into the job, the apprentice dismissed the architect. The new course, a place in the sun, a world empire, a navy to stand beside Britain's, everything, everywhere, loudly, at once. The most powerful machine in Europe. And the only qualified driver had just been escorted from the building. Handling, which, on this product, means one thing. What happens when it speaks? Wilhelm's diplomatic method was to say the most magnificent thing he could think of, immediately, in public, and then be sincerely astonished by the wreckage. In 1900, seeing troops off to China, he told them to fight like the Huns of Attila, so no enemy would ever forget Germany. The press wrote it down. Through 2 world wars, his own people would be called Huns. He handed out the word himself. Then, 1908, the crash. He gave a British newspaper an interview intended, sincerely, to make friends. He explained to the English that they were mad as March hares, that ordinary Germans could not stand them, and that he, personally, was the only thing holding the grudge back. He insulted the hosts, his own country, and himself in one conversation, and called it outreach. At home, the humiliation was complete. His authority never recovered, and the generals began, very quietly, to root the serious decisions around the emperor. Remember the generals. Reliability. The fault was never mechanical. It was the operator. Wilhelm was mercurial, bottomlessly vain, and so open to flattery that his court turned it into a management system. Staff shaved the bad news out of his reports. One wrong sentence could derail him for a week. He read the world's dispatches pen in hand and filled the margins with instant verdicts. Entire nations dismissed in the white space around other men's work. His chancellor called managing the emperor a career in itself. His inner circle collapsed into scandal, leaving him lonelier and easier to steer. He would commit to something enormous in the morning, panic by the afternoon, and reverse himself by dinner. The most powerful man in Europe took his settings from whoever stood closest. A review tells you what a product does. Ownership tells you what it is like to live with. So, we sent the volunteer. 3 days in Imperial Berlin, 1903. No money of the period, no German. As always, he has volunteered. The paperwork says so. He has never seen the paperwork. Day 1. Excellent. The trams run. The streets gleam. Officials examine his badge and find it deeply reassuring. Day 2. At breakfast, he made one small remark about the emperor's mustache. Insulting the Kaiser was not rude. It was a crime, with a statute number and a very busy docket. He spent the day explaining the joke to the Prussian police through an interpreter. The worst audience a joke has ever had. Terminated at hour 41. Remember that number. Future products will be tested against it. So, what did 30 years of this cost to run? For the first 25 years, the bill was the Navy. Wilhelm wanted battleships, fleets of them, and he got them. It achieved exactly one thing, efficiently. It frightened Britain into building twice as many, and into befriending France and Russia. He paid a fortune for his own encirclement. Then came the invoice that has never stopped arriving. In the summer of 1914, after the assassination in Sarajevo, Wilhelm assured Austria that Germany stood behind whatever it chose to do. Historians call it the blank check, and still argue how much he understood. Nobody argues about what he did next. He went on holiday. The supreme warlord sailed his annual northern cruise while the continent counted down. By the time he returned and tried frantically to slow it all down, the mobilization timetables had taken over, and the timetables did not answer to him. What followed was the First World War. The jokes stop here. The running costs of this reign are counted in millions of dead, his own subjects first among them. That number never comes off the bill. Depreciation. Total. By the war's last 2 years, the supreme warlord was supreme the way a ship's figurehead commands the fleet. His generals ran the front, the economy, and increasingly the emperor himself. He signed what was put in front of him. 3 decades demanding to be painted the all-powerful war emperor, and when the real war came, the real soldiers moved him aside, like a coat stand. In November 1918, with the fleet in mutiny and the country in revolution, he was told the one thing his life was engineered never to hear, that everyone would be better off if he left. He abdicated, boarded a train, and crossed into the neutral Netherlands. He never set foot in Germany again. And here is how it ends. Not with a comeback. With firewood. In exile, the man who had owned every uniform in Europe picked up an axe, walked into the garden, and felled trees. Every day, for 20 years, with one working arm. Visitors were handed sawn logs as souvenirs. Signed. Remember the opening photographs. This was a man who could not pass a camera without a costume. And he spent his last 20 years on labor nobody asked for, alone, in a garden in a foreign country, as if there was still something left to prove, and no one left to prove it to. So, the scores. Styling, 8. The highest mark this program has ever awarded. As a collection, as a mustache, as a poster, he was flawless. Performance, 3. He was handed the finest machine in Europe, with its builder standing beside it. He sent the builder home. Handling, 1. He talked his empire into a corner, one telegram at a time. Reliability, 2. A warlord who could be redirected by the last voice in the room. Running costs, 1. Handed the strongest country in Europe, returned it beaten, starving, and a republic. Overall, not an average, a verdict. 3 out of 10. On this channel's ledger, that is 1 full rung above Mussolini. Wilhelm would be appalled to share a shelf with a blacksmith's son. But the rung is earned. Mussolini built his catastrophe himself, from scratch, on purpose. Wilhelm had his delivered, fully assembled, and merely sailed it into a reef. And do you remember the wax? Half a century of mournings under a product called "It is achieved." He wore that sentence on his face through a lost war, a lost empire, a lost throne, and 20 years of firewood in someone else's country. It is achieved. The most honest label he ever wore. It just never said what it was. I came to this review expecting a tyrant. What I found was a frightened man in the most expensive fancy dress, and somewhere around the woodpile I stopped enjoying myself. The first product I have finished reviewing and pitied. Verdict: not suitable for humanity. 3 out of 10.